Alexis. I'm Nicole.
And I'm Ken.
And today we're doing Colossians.
The book you can wear on your feet when it's wet outside.
Because it sounds like galoshes.
See, when you explain it, it like, you know.
Well, it kind of felt like it's just hanging there.
No, that was the joke, like seeping in.
You had your galoshes. I have my Malachi Luigi. Our own, like, funny things that are funny to us.
At least for me, probably to no one else. So.
Well, it gives a chuckle.
Alright.
It's good. Solid. It's okay.
I get mocked at home for not being as funny, nearly as funny as I think, well, as I am to me. How about that?
I try to be supportive in your self-humor.
A little pity laugh here and there. Actually, my sister-in-law, Lizzie, who may even be watching this, she does what we call a Beth laugh, which she goes, ha 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 ha. And, like,
that's how my brother actually laughs.
Well, and I think sometimes for her it is legit. Like, she's not being just a pity laugh. But then sometimes it does feel like, like you don't have to laugh. Anyway, Colossians. Nicole, why don't you hit us with the history?
History. You know, this is in the vein of Ephesians.
Which you also did the history for.
You know,
what kind of mad about?
Ken assigns who gets themes and stories and histories. He's kind of the puppeteer of this whole thing. And I noticed that that I get kind of the shaft on some of these things. Like really vague histories or no theme books or stories that are stupid. I shouldn't say stories that are stupid, but like there's no explanation to the story.
And I figure, you know, being the big PhD student that Nicole's about to be, going off to get all fancy and such, that, you know, you of all people would have the learning, you know, to bring to us. That's why I don't give you the shaft. I give you the most challenging material to complement it.
You know, if I was getting my PhD in biblical studies, maybe. But I'm not. I'm getting it in medieval theology. So.
I'm just, you know.
Wow, you're just being you.
I'm keeping it real.
He's keeping it real.
I keeps everything real.
He does. And what we know about Colossians is really not very much. And we're going to keep it real now. We're not going to make this fancy backstory. But what we do know is that it was written before Ephesians, because Ephesians depends a lot on Colossians for kind of structure and literary tropes and ideas. So a lot of things in Colossians may sound very familiar to Ephesians. The other thing is, like, again, along with Ephesians, we don't really know the author, but for Colossians, there's enough that feels like Paul. There's a lot that feels like Paul, but there's a couple things that don't. And in the introduction, it says that it's from Paul and Timothy. So the thinking is some scholars kind of found this happy medium, being like, well, maybe it's just him. That Timothy is the one.
It's Tim.
Yeah. This is Tim's book. Yeah. Which actually makes a lot of sense on why it would feel like Paul, but some of the word choices might be different.
And it can help, you know, you all understand, too, how you could have kind of a school of Paul.
Right.
Paul talks so much about Timothy, originally Barnabas and Acts, but Paul's got all of these other folks, Prisca and Aquila, and all these other fellow co-workers with him. I mean, there's a big community. We only hear from him.
Right.
But we know, you know, there's this huge group of his friends.
It's kind of like people who study certain theologians start to sound like those theologians and use those kind of languages and terms. It makes a lot of sense once we kind of get over our authorship shock.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So that's the history that we have.
And they're all early letters that influenced the church as it was first developing. So sometimes, you know, we could probably do an entire video on the canon itself, the books that get, you know, chosen, voted on to be within the Bible. And folks, I always get like massive interest about, well, what about the books that didn't make it the biggest dividing line between the books that made it in and out. It's not a giant political conspiracy.
No.
As much as it makes a great movie, but
yeah.
But mainly it's age. And so books that were
use.
Age and use, yeah. So books that were really old and communities found them helpful. That became scripture over time. It was a very organic process. And books that were really late and only used in some communities but not others, didn't. So this is a book that part of the Pauline community, very, very early, in that. So we have Colossians.
Yeah.
Thematically, I'll just jump onto that.
Please do.
I shall. Again, very similar with Ephesians, where you get this much larger theological framework of, the whole creation of the cosmos and all of that. But there's also a specific, not really problem in saying the community, but there's a specific concern that Paul has when he's writing the book of Colossians, and or Paul, Timothy, this whole community. There is a within this church, teachers have come in and they have specifically, kind of like in Galatians, said, it's good to have faith, but there are all these other kind of things to know, teachings to memorize, and practices to follow in order to be a real Christian. So again, it's this theme of people wanting to come in after the fact, like marketers, really. I mean, this feels like church marketing, to say, boy, do you really want to make sure you're part of the group, and that you trading on this sort of new believer anxiety of,
I'm not?
Right, like,
I'm missing something?
I probably should do more, and I want to do more, and they say, well, we've got more for you for only, what would you pay for this, $40? No, $19.99, $95. We've got a set of practices and beliefs. Now in Galatians, it was it was all from what's called a Judaizing community, where they believed that Christians needed to follow Jewish law. In Colossians, it's from a more Roman type or Hellenistic community, to say, there are all these sort of philosophies and these Hellenistic practices that you could really enhance, your Christian faith with. And so Paul is spending, the entire second chapter here really kind of defending about that. We could probably talk a lot, and we haven't, about the ancient religious landscape at this point. We've talked a lot about the Jewish landscape, but the Hellenistic landscape is just as interesting and diverse.
And just as shaping for the Christian world.
Very well, if not more, because this huge Gentile community that occurred.
Yeah.
Now, all of you probably know Zeus, Athena, and all of the Roman and classical gods. Yeah. For the most part, in the first century, this was a religion that was not a living faith for most first century people. Right. We had the temples, which were banks, interestingly enough. They held most of the money. People wouldn't go against the gods, they wouldn't talk against them, but they didn't really, this wasn't a living part of their faith.
Right.
What was, however, we had mystery religions. So we had, there was a mystery cult at Eleusis, which is a port city of Athens, and so people would kind of go off on these retreats. And actually, this was such a mystery, we actually don't know.
Yeah, we don't know.
The Eleusinian business.
They were really, really good. And
they did
kind of mysterious.
There was Mithras, the cult of Mithras, and there's one town, I forget which town it is, but we've done the archaeology of it. You've got a synagogue, a Christian church, and a Mithraeum, a cult of Mithras, right on the same street.
Yeah.
So like today, on the street that our church is on here, there are one church down the road, a Lutheran community church, then a Lutheran church. There's a little bit of diversity. Yeah. But in the ancient Roman world, like this one, you've got Mithras, which this is mainly a soldier's religion. Most notable when they have this giant baptism, if you will, a blood baptism, where they put a giant bull up, they put a soldier underneath, I'm sorry, and they just slit the bull right open.
Oh my, I wonder why that died out.
But you have to admit, you would know you went through something. You would know you have an experience.
Like, you've been bold.
And you can see how that might appeal to soldiers. I mean, it was an all-male kind of fellowship, blood,